Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. The auto industry has been reeling under the impact of the coronavirus pandemic and the consequent lockdown. Digitization has emerged as the key to survival for India's auto industry. India's auto sector, the fourth largest in the world in terms of volume or in terms of number of vehicles sold, has seen a massive decline in 2020. The month of September, though, has thrown up a lifeline with sales going up. The festive season is going to be a big litmus test in deciding how well the auto sector does in the months and years to come. The health and digitization of the auto industry is what I'm going to discuss in the big picture today. Joining me on the program right now are Shashank Srivastava, Executive Director, Maruti Suzuki India; Kaushik Madhavan, Vice President, Mobility Practice, Frost & Sullivan, South Asia; and Arun Malhotra, Automobile Expert. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Kaushik, I'd like to begin the program with you first. Let's try and understand and analyze the health of the automobile sector as it stands right now in the country today.
Right, Frank. So, if you look at the health of the automotive industry, obviously the past couple of quarters have been very, very challenging, for obvious reasons. However, what is good to note is that we are already seeing green shoots. That means, for example, last month, September has been a fairly good month. So if you compare September 2020 versus September 2019, the numbers are very, very similar. So that means, the numbers are going up. So the positive sentiment among the customers is actually improving, right? Added to that, we are going to have a festive season over the next, let's say, 6 to 8 weeks. Now, that is going to add significantly to the sales volumes as well. What is also important is how the customer journey itself has changed, and digitization has a lot of role to play. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes from now. But generally, looking at the automotive industry in India, both the passenger car space and the two-wheeler space are seeing some very, very positive upward trend. So I'm hoping, let's say, in the next 2 to 3 months, the automotive industry in India will bounce back to its, let's say, 2019 numbers, or let's say pre-COVID-19 numbers. So I'm very optimistic about the situation in India. Thankfully, the monsoon has been really good. So the sales that are going to be impacted or affected by monsoon in India, which is typically the two-wheeler sales, motorcycles, scooters, especially in upcountry markets and rural India, they are going to be very positive. And, in addition to that, all the entry-level segments, in passenger cars are also going to see an upward tick because of the pent-up demand that we have seen over the past 6 to 8 months. So all in all, I'm quite optimistic, and I think we are in for a very good next 2 to 3 months.
Okay, we are in for a good next 2 to 3 months is what Kaushik Madhavan is suggesting. Let me bring in Shashank Srivastava into the picture now. So what is it that has helped the auto sector in September? How important is the festive season now going to be going forward? Is it going to be a litmus test for the automobile sector?
Thank you, Frank. Actually, what has really happened in the past 6 months in the auto industry, after we saw that severe lockdown towards the end of March, April, as you know, there was no retail, absolutely nil. I think it was the first time ever in Indian auto industry that we had zero sales, both wholesale and retail. And subsequently, in Q1, we did see pent-up demand coming up, but the supply chain was badly ruptured. And I think going forward in the Q2, which is July, August, and September, we saw the supply chain, which was ruptured, getting repaired. As such, the vehicle availability was much better. So the first quarter, or up till August, actually, not just first quarter, the story was of reducing stocks because of the less availability of vehicles and more retails, thanks to the pent-up demand. But September was a period when the production became almost at the same level as pre-COVID. So there was a good, healthy buildup of inventory. Remember, September was a Shraddh period, which is considered very inauspicious in terms of buying of cars, and dealers were preparing to stock up for the auspicious season, which will start from 16 October onwards. So that has been the story. And of course, the bounce back has been a little pleasant surprise, because I think across the industry, we weren't expecting such a good bounce back. So month on month, there has been a good increase. And as they say, Bharat is leading India with the rural bounce back much better than the urban bounce back, thanks to the good Rabi crop, the Kharif sowing being pretty good, 10% up over last year, and also a very widespread and a positive monsoon, up 7% over last year. So that's been the story. And I think going forward, we can see a good situation emerging for the festive season, barring a COVID downside if it happens.
Absolutely. All right. So, Arun Malhotra, let me bring you into the picture now. You know, we are talking about these segments, talking about how rural demand has really picked up. Do you see this continuing really, Shashank just pointed out that it is Bharat that is driving India and not the other way around? And also, what about the segments? Is it going to be the entry-level segments that are going to do well, or do you think that the mid-segment, or is it going to be the luxury segment that is going to push the car sales forward?
So what Shashank rightly said, at this point of time, Bharat is leading India. One thing which we've seen in the industry, although tractor is not considered part of the auto industry, but tractor was the bellwether state as far as rural demand is concerned. And the surge you see in rural demand there 3-4 months has a lot of good tidings for the auto industry. Clearly, as Shashank mentioned, the first quarter was a washout to some extent because of lockdown. There was time taken to build up schedules in production. But I think situation is normalized, and this whole focus on personal mobility, which is also an aftershoot of COVID, has come in. So I believe we are in a better position at this point of time. But one thing we must remember, auto industry is more like a marathon race. It's not like a 100 meters dash or a 2020 match. And last two festival season, if I go in 2018 and 19, for various reasons have been bad. So effectively, even by the law of averages, 2020 festival season should be better. So the pent-up demand and the yearning for personal mobility should bode well. But I believe rural has led the way, but there are already offshoots, green shoots visible in the urban market. So all in all, there are good days ahead. But the challenge is how long it can sustain. Once the festival season ends at the end of November, there will be another ball game altogether. So we'll have to wait and watch.
Okay, so the time or the period after November is going to be very crucial, is what the panelists are suggesting. Let's bring in the angle of digitization into the picture now. So, Kaushik Madhavan, as far as digitization is concerned, you know, the pandemic has taught us a new normal. It's something that we are still getting used to. Several people have already gotten used to it. We, the media industry, also doing some things differently now. As this discussion we've seen, you know, being done online. That's something that was not thought of before. But so digitization, whether we like it or not, is taking place all around us. How is it taking place in the automobile industry? Is it happening the way you would like to see it happen?
Yeah, good, very good question, Frank. So let's look at a holistic picture, right? So when we talk about digitization in the automotive industry, we need to look at the entire value chain, right? Right from the consideration phase, right? When a customer is looking to buy a vehicle, he's looking to, let's say, choose between different brands, different segments, different variants, and so on. So that is going to be phase one. The second phase is research phase, right, where the customer is actually comparing specifications, right, maybe doing test drives, looking at colors, looking at variants, looking at engines, transmission options, and so on. So that is the second phase, which is the research phase. The third phase is actually the purchase phase, right? Whether the purchase is going to happen online or physically at the dealership, that is changing as well. I mean, case in point, Hyundai India, right? Hyundai India has launched their click to buy campaign, and you can actually today buy a car online. That means complete buying process, right from choosing the variant, making some personalization, customization, choosing the finance option, making the payment, and making the purchase. So the entire purchase process has been digitized, right? Not only that, we are also looking at an extension of these, let us say phase 4 and phase 5, which is after sales and service, and most importantly, the second life of vehicles, right? Today, a lot of OEMs are coming up with pre-owned certified vehicle programs. That means there is a lot of confidence in people's minds that OEMs themselves are coming into this space and they are being sold digitally as well. So the entire customer journey, right from consideration to research to purchase to ownership and second life is being digitized. And that is the way it's going to be forward. That means going forward, we will see a lot more stakeholders coming into the digitization platform, not only the OEMs, but also the garages, the marketplaces, the component suppliers, all the after-sales distributor, retailer network is going to come online. So I think going forward, the entire automotive ownership journey is going to be digitized, and most importantly, the customer is to benefit from all this because there is more transparency. There are better deals out there. There is more confidence among the customers to actually make these purchases online. So that's the way we are looking at it.
Okay. That is as far as the customer goes. That is as far as the customer experience is concerned. So Shashank, let me come across to you now and talk about the manufacturers. What about procurement? We've spoken about digitization as far as the customer is concerned. What about manufacturers? What is it that manufacturers are doing? What about procurement and all these other aspects?
Yes, so I'll make some quick points regarding the auto industry digitalization. First of all, I think from that perspective, digitalization was very much already in the picture before the pandemic. It is post-pandemic that there has been an acceleration of digitalization. So that's quite clear from what the OEMs have been doing. Second, digitalization is not just limited to consumer journey. It is not just about the 26 touch points which a consumer makes while he buys a car. And we keep saying that we here cannot talk of digitalization. We can only talk of digitalization. So there will be some aspects like taking delivery or taking test drives, which will be physical, as it can't be completely digital. Third thing is, as far as other activities are concerned, whether it is logistics, whether it is CRM, whether it is supply chain, whether it is production or even design, there has been a huge influx of technologies on processes based on digitalization because it enables us. Some technologies like AR, VR, big data, machine learning, the artificial intelligence, they are all being used in different aspects, in different parts of the entire chain in the automobile. And in fact, for example, if I talk about design, it is being helped greatly by the availability of consumer data, which you can be translated into the design aspects. And also, if you look at showroom experiences or having a single view of consumers or having predictive modeling, all these are possible today only because digitalization has and the technology which is available has made it possible. So I think there is going to be not only has been a sea change, there is going to be even bigger change going forward as far as digitalization is concerned.
Okay. All right. So let me take the points that both of you have made forward with Arun Malhotra now. This issue of online purchases to now buying a car being about touch and feel and feeling it or experiencing it. At some point, do these, oppose each other? There's terms like zero contact, no contact. There's a lot of it going around now. But is that really possible when a consumer goes out to buy a car?
So, what Kaushik has said, Shashank, I agree with you. The customer journey, the touch points have increased in terms of digitalization. That's an important part. But we must remember that there are a lot of points which has a lot of touch and feel. Now, even talking of, although we may say we click and just buy a car, but practically it doesn't happen. Today, within the bankers, even you have financial institutions, whether they are private banks, nationalized banks, NBFCs. I don't think any company is in a position to offer 30 finance options. Similarly, for exchange of vehicles. So there will be a good play. I mean, digitalization is taking place, but the touch and feel is still an important part. When you select a color, when you select your vehicle, when you take delivery, India is a lot of emotional connect and empathy is a part of our society. So I don't think it will go out. Yes, digitalization has put people on the back foot, but I feel processes will get more amplified. They will become better. You don't have to do so much running around, but the core elements of touch and feel in terms of choosing, delivering, and even talking will remain there. So it's to be good. And what I agree with, which Shashank has mentioned, the development which has taken place in the supply chain, the manufacturing, the research and development in terms of virtual simulation, predictive quality checks, that is a big revolution which is happening, which is not really visible upfront. The customer journey is visible, but I believe the transformation which is happening in the manufacturing, supply chain, R&D, and logistics is much more. So there's going to be a new world and new things will emerge, but the human factor will still remain.
The human factor will still remain. That's something that we can't take out at the end of the day, is what the panelists are suggesting. Let me bring in another aspect. Talk about this entire, issue of digitization. What happens once the pandemic is over? Are we going to go back to a pre-COVID kind of a situation as far as digitization is concerned, or do you believe that we are only going to build on this and take it forward?
I think it's going to be a combination of both. I think there will be certain elements that will get amplified even post-COVID. Like, for example, all the research phase or the initial phases of, considering a vehicle will always remain digital. But I completely agree with what Shashank-san mentioned, which is it is going to be a phygital concept. It's going to be a combination of physical aspect and a digital aspect. There will be certain things that will remain, physical. That means the Indian consumer's vehicle purchase is a very, very emotional one. More than that, it's an entire family that is involved. It is not just a personal purchase, it's a family purchase. So there will be some amount of wanting to touch and feel and experience it, whether it's a test drive, whether it is looking at the interiors, that will remain physical. So I believe that it is going to be a combination of both physical and digital. Just to go back to one of the points, Shashank-san mentioned, it's a very good one, especially on the manufacturing side. What we are seeing a lot more is flexible manufacturing, right? Gone are the days where we had dedicated lines, for one model, one variant, and so on and so forth. Going forward, that is not going to be sustainable. That means we are looking at OEMs already looking at flexible manufacturing that can support multiple models, multiple variants. And why not? We are already looking at contract manufacturing. It is not only your model and variant that you're looking at manufacturing, but looking at manufacturing a competitor's brand as well. So flexible manufacturing driven by Industry 4.0 and artificial intelligence will be the flavor of the day. So I think it is going to work both ways. There is digitization and impact of digitization in the post-COVID. I'm pretty sure we are still a long way away from completely saying post-COVID. We are still there, but nevertheless, I think it's going to have an impact both on the consumer side of things and the manufacturing side of things as well.
Absolutely. All right. So, Shashank Srivastava, as far as digitization is concerned, what challenges do you foresee? You said that the pandemic has only ensured that the process has been speeded up. But what problems or challenges do you foresee going forward?
Yes, I think the biggest challenge, I believe, and I have observed from the organization behavior, is the change of mindset of all the people who are involved in this entire chain. I think that, I believe, is one of the biggest requirement, change of mindset for the full implementation. On the technology front, I think there are some various technologies which are making possible for example, the big data analytics, the sort of data lakes and data warehousing which we are doing, giving us a single view of customer, enables us to not only treat him as one individual. You will see a larger personalization going forward. It is all being held by this technologies which are available. The AI, for example, makes us we can actually predict consumer behavior both in during the time of sale, his vehicle choice, etc. So I think the second big challenge will be the emergence of which technology to adopt and adapt out of the many flux of technologies which are available. The third challenge, of course, as we go forward, is how quickly you can implement it across the entire value chain. And I think, as someone mentioned, 94% of the consumer journey is now starting with research on the internet. So you will find going forward the consumer behavior itself changing, both in terms of media consumption or even in terms of choices which they make and how they make the choices. To understand those choices and to be abreast and keeping pace with all these changes, because the changes are going to be extremely fast, that I believe is the third big barrier for digitalization.
All right. Talking about challenges, let's look at the bigger picture and look at the automobile sector as a whole. Arun Malhotra, and you said that we need to watch out for the period after the festive season, post-November. So what big challenges do you see there?
See, one is the uncertainty on COVID. Second is, the structural changes which are happening in the economy, which are affecting different parts of the economy to different extent in terms of people's incomes, people's livelihood. So that will play a major role. Because please remember one thing, September we are seeing as a very good month, but September is also a month where there is some pent-up demand being met, stocks being built up for October and November. So we shouldn't read too much into the September numbers. But I think what's been mentioned by the other panelists, this concept of digitization will improve efficiency output. And I see this digitization and what we talked of, the offline, or which is the digitization we talked of. So we need a certain synergy, a certain symphony, and I will call it a certain sangam prevailing. That's what it is. The only challenge which I see is probably companies are getting from the customer's mind that getting very intrusive, trying to judge customer's mind, customer's actions, activities. It shouldn't happen like a 1984 George Orwell, when we know everything about the customer. A certain level of privacy that we have to keep in mind. But clearly, the process is irreversible, and there are some parts of it which will remain on ground. But clearly, auto industry, with the low penetration we have in our country, whether it's for four-wheelers especially, and also two-wheelers, the overall momentum, the overall future is still bright. We may have some hiccups here and there, but the trajectory is still going to be positive. And last 2 years has not been a great month. And by the law of averages, this should be a good year. It should be a good for the future.
Okay. Time now to get closing comments from all my panelists with the best way forward. Starting first with you, Kaushik.
Thanks, Frank. So, two important things that I want to touch upon. One is going forward, we will see the emergence of new business models as well. We are moving away from a traditional ownership model to a bit of a usership model, right? That means we will see a lot more short-term rentals, short-term leasings, vehicle subscription services coming into the picture. I agree, they may not eat up into a large pie of the ownership model, but they are going to make an impact, no doubt, especially the younger millennials who are not really interested in the burden of ownership and so on. So they will opt for new business models. That's number one. Second one is consolidation. I think, very good point Arun San mentioned, there will be a lot of inefficacies and inefficiencies being weeded out. That means we will see a lot more consolidation, both on the supplier side of things and the distributor retail side of things as well. The smaller, regional standalone distributors and retailers are being acquired by the bigger regional ones. Mm-hmm. So there will be a lot more consolidation in the business. And as a consequence of that, there will be better profit as well. So these are two trends that I see that are going to have a huge influence on the Indian automotive market in the next 12 to 16 months.
All right. Shashank Srivastava?
Yes. So going forward, I think for the long term, yes, technologies and consumer behavior will change substantially. So much so that you will find a lot of technologies changing as far as product is concerned. As far as the model of automobile is concerned, the selling aspect, the dealer business model, and I also see a lot of new laws emerging regarding data and data privacy going forward. And for the short term, I must say, the next 6 months, which I think most panelists were referring to, I always say that we have to be, we are optimistic, cautiously optimistic. And also that we believe that the long-term growth will depend on the basic fundamentals of economy and the sentiment. Sentiments, we keep saying, are very important for discretionary purchase like car. So we can have a COVID downside or we can have a vaccine upside. That's the story for the short term.
Absolutely. And Arun Malhotra, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
One thing I agree with Shashank, the customer's behavior will change dramatically. So you'll see more customization, more individualization happening. So customer will get more and more evolved, which will put a pressure, I would say a positive pressure on the entire ecosystem. Secondly, the entire supply chain between production, supply chain, logistics, R&D will get very streamlined and there will be phenomenal increase in efficiency. And third, the distribution model, which has remained, you can say, unaffected or unchanged for the last 100 years will change. We have a distribution model in terms of reaching to customer, which is very capital intensive in terms of infrastructure, in terms of working capital, and in terms of manpower. That will see a lot of change with digitization. So these are the three big trends I see coming in the near future.
All right. On that note, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that the auto sector has had a big blow, really, as far as the last few quarters are concerned. But the month of September has seen a positive uptrend and green shoots have most certainly emerged. We need to keep an eye out for the festive season. The entry-level segment is where the bounce back is coming from, and rural demand has gone up. It is Bharat that is leading India. Now, digitization will improve efficiency. We need symphony and synergy going forward, and the future looks bright for the automobile industry. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.